All right, good afternoon. This is Mr. Ken Smith. Ken is a franchisee for Pinch a Penny. He spent just short of 20 years, or
about 20 years.
Right at 20 years with Walmart. So he knows retail at its finest. He was a district manager up in the Philadelphia area and retired from Walmart and decided he wanted to open up his own business. So he explored a lot of franchises, so he's going to share some of that with you and also talk about being a Pinch a Penny franchisee. Thanks, Ken.
Thanks. Good afternoon. Just, as you said, I worked for Walmart for 20 years. Opened up about 30 to 35 stores and started with them when they were small stores before supercenters started, and went through the whole growth phase of it. But after 20 years, I decided I wanted to get out and really start my own business and do something on my own. Also spend some more time with my kids, but found out it probably was less time I spent with my kids once you open your own business. But I looked at two different things. I wanted to stay in retail. So I first debated whether to do a franchise or a startup. Looked at a few different type of startup concepts, whether it be dollar stores, party stores, even some pet supply type places, but really leaned towards franchise business. And the thing that certainly attracted me to franchising was the fact that it is a proven model. Even though you get a lot of startup franchises that aren't as proven, I was looking for something that was in existence for at least 5 years, that had a success rate, and I felt that would better serve me as a business owner and give me that support that was out there. The other thing was certainly the name recognition. When you think of whether it be Pinch Penny, Jimmy John's, Papa John's, all those type franchises, you know that name and you're familiar with it, so I didn't have to start out with Ken's Dollar Store and hope people would pick up on it and come in and shop. When I started first looking for franchises, again, I was looking for something that had a niche in the market, especially in this day and age. Not only are there hundreds of retailers out there, but you also have the internet that you have to deal with. So I tried to narrow it down to something that could compete with the internet as well as compete primarily with big box stores, Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart's, Target, even the grocery type stores. I probably, over the course of a year, I had done some consulting as well and just trying to find time as I was going through my process. But I probably looked through about 30 to 40 UFOCs. That's still what they call them, right?
No.
No.
FDDs.
FDDs.
Franchise Disclosure Documents.
Which sometimes don't disclose a whole lot.
Well, did you have any trouble getting them when you contacted stores?
I contacted the franchises directly. No, I had when I was done, I had a pile about that high of stuff I had to throw out. So everyone that I inquired about, pretty well sent me to the FDD.
Did they ask you for information, though, and the fact that you were a Walmart district manager for 20 years?
I had to give them background and some financial information as well.
Okay.
So I had to,
It's going to hurt some of you guys, the financial information.
But yeah, they requested for each one. So anyway, I started going through those, started doing some research on all the different ones. Pretty well started. The first one I really looked at seriously was called the company Party America, which was located out in San Francisco. It's pretty similar to Party City, but just not quite as large. I went out and did some research and went out there and actually visited with them. And was something I was going to look into and actually was looking at sites, but then they were bought out by Party City, so I had a change of direction at that point. The second one I looked at was Signorama, which is pretty popular sign company. They have a couple other different franchises under the same umbrella name. Went down and visited with them as well. Was interested, but a few things that had turned me off with them is most of the franchises, will request or have you. They tried. A lot of it's just they're trying to sell you a product. On some of them, some are actually, want to make sure you are successful. Sinorama, I felt, was a good business, but I felt they were trying to sell me the business more than I was, actually interested in purchasing it. So it was more of a sales job. When I met with their recruiter, he took me to a couple of stores, but you could tell they were the best stores. And the owners would give you information, but I found out later they would get paid for supplying you information. If they took you to that store, then they would give you a little kickback. So I looked at it, ran some of the numbers. Discovery Day was good. I enjoyed that, but it really wasn't something that I felt I would really be successful at. The next one I looked at was Pinch Penny. As far as doing a Discovery Day or really getting involved in it, when I sent them the information, they sent me the FDD. And one thing that was unique about the Pinch Penny FDD, primarily all the other ones I had received under Section 19,
The
financial part, they would always say, they didn't disclose anything. It was proprietary information, and they didn't release it. Whereas on Pinch Pennies, they actually broke it down and gave you an average sales volume, average profit volume, and they listed it as small, medium, and large stores. And certainly that's helpful when you're trying to invest a lot of money and open a business. That gave a good idea of how successful the stores were. The other thing I had noticed is they hadn't closed any stores, and to this day they've never closed any stores. And as I did my research, the part that was unique about them, whether it be Sinorama, I'd also looked at Quiznos, but both of those places, you sign up, you sign your franchise agreement, you give them their $35,000, $40,000, and then you're responsible for finding the location and having them approve the location. Pinch Penny worked a little bit differently. They already have the locations based upon the pool counts that they want stores to be in. So basically, they're going to tell you where you're going to put your store. In my particular case, probably 3 years prior to me even getting the location, they had already signed the lease agreement once the shopping center had opened. And that's, I think, what makes them unique and why they don't close stores. They do sell stores. People buy the stores, sell it 5, 10 years later, and go on and do something differently. But the stores are usually very successful because they are in those particular markets. The other thing I liked about Pinch Penny was that before you could go meet with them and move forward, they required you to visit 10 stores and actually take notes of those stores and forward that to them to prove that you visited those stores. They didn't tell you what stores to go to. They didn't call anybody and say, hey, this person's showing up. They sent you a letter and said, at your convenience, visit 10 different stores and then send us that documentation of what you found when you went in there, as far as that who you met, just so they had some type of proof that you actually did visit. And the reason for that is they want to make sure that it is a good fit for you. And I took the letter and went over to Jacksonville for a couple of days, and there's about 12 or 15 stores in that market. So in 2 days, I was able to visit the 10 stores. And you got a different perspective from each person, because a lot of people from different backgrounds. I had some stores owners that said, no, the worst thing you could do. Others said, yeah, it's great. Others said, they're happy with it. As I started to talk to some of the people that didn't like it as much, the biggest thing is they didn't like having to follow the rules of the franchise. And they probably would have been better suited to do a startup as opposed to a franchise. So after visiting 10 stores, then you go on a Discovery Day. And on the Discovery Day I went to, there were actually 6 different people that were being evaluated and selected for the same store. So you almost were competing with other people. You met with about 6 different people on almost like a job interview. Went through that process, and 2 weeks later they called and said that you were selected. So it was fairly competitive as far as the good locations that they're trying to fill. So after Discovery Day, we discussed location, and then I guess the fun begins when you write them a check and you get started. And again, going back to the rules, I guess we'll cover the location they picked. I mean, it's up in the northeast part of Tallahassee. If you're from there or been up in that area, it's certainly a different demographic than downtown Tallahassee. There's, I'd say, within 3 miles of the store, there's about 3,000 pools. So it is a fairly dense pool population.
How do they get that information?
They have all sorts of different websites and databases that they search through. And they get, as soon as a new pool is built, they pull once, I think once a week, they pull contracts and permits, and they get that information. But they can pinpoint, they'll have a store and they'll pinpoint where all the pools are around that store. There were 2 stores, still are 2 stores in Tallahassee. So they have a territory, and your territory is 3-mile radius. So my circumference is 3 miles from the store. The other store is exactly 6 miles from where I am. But it was certainly a market that if Pinch Penny didn't move into, then certainly other pool places would move into because it was such a good market.
So does that mean that like any 2 Pinch Pennies can't be within 6 miles of each other?
Right. Yep. So see, each have a 3-mile circumference, so it's 6 miles from store to store.
So your area of protection is 3 miles.
Around, yeah.
But okay.
And theirs is 3 miles, so they
gotcha.
butt up against each other.
Okay.
So that is where it has to be at least.
So each individual store gets 3 miles, but that creates really 6 miles
between
stores.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. Yes.
You were in Jacksonville asking owners to get 10 stores.
Right.
Does that mean 10 different owners? Because I assume that some of them are more than one store, or if they're not.
I visited 10 different owners. There are some franchises that own more than one. Pinch Penny limits it to the most you can own is 2 stores. And they do that because they want you to actually be, actually involved in the store on a day-to-day basis. So therefore, they figure 2 is plenty for somebody to be involved in. So you can't be like a McDonald's franchisee or even like a Jimmy John's where you could have maybe 6 or 8 or 10 multiple units. They limit it to 2 so that you are physically involved in it.
Are you guys solely supplies, or do you also have a section of actually like sending out people to service pools as well?
We do all 3. We do the supplies and the actual retail part, and that's a good majority of the business. But then we also do pool repairs and service, motor equipment repairs, and then we also do. We started just recently last year. We started doing a cleaning service. Some of the stores that have been in existence for a while, the cleaning service, especially down in central and southern Florida, where you go into one neighborhood and you can do 40 pools without moving a truck because everything's so compact. But some of the stores do 400 or 500 pools cleaning on a weekly basis.
But you don't have to do the pool cleaning. That's just an option you have.
That's an option.
But you have to run all that revenue through the store?
Every pool cleaning, all the repairs you run through the store. And you also pay, and we'll talk about the royalty, but you also pay a royalty on the cleaning and the service as well. And they have just recently, this coming January, where there's competition from APS, which is American Pool Supplies, or American Pool Service, which is their franchise model is it's only pool repairs and pool service. So they're trying to cut into that business. So what Pinch Penny has done is now if you're a retail owner, you do have the option of doing cleaning and service. But if you decide you don't want to do that, then they will sell out a franchisee. You could just buy a franchise for just the repairs and service for that market. So if I decided I just wanted to do retail and no pool cleaning and no pool service, they could sell a franchise to somebody for just cleaning and service in that market. So that's something they're doing, because about half the stores, there's 230 stores now, and about half of them do cleaning and repairs, and the other half just do the retail part of it. And that's one of the reasons we started getting into the repair and service business to kind of keep that within ourselves. Plus, it's obviously a good growth area for us.
The cleaning's got to be high margin.
It's fair margin. It's more cash flow during the wintertime than anything else. Typically, you're charging most down south. You charge about $90 for a pool, and that includes chemicals. Up here, the average is about 150, 160. But during the wintertime, you could be out in the pool for an hour, hour and a half because of leaves and cleaning and debris. So, paying somebody $15 an hour, spend another $5 or $6 on chemicals. You pay pinch a penny 5%, and you're paying for a truck and fuel and insurance. You got to do volume to make some money on that part of it. We found a location, but let me just cover, I guess, the fees. And a lot of them are pretty similar. You have your initial franchise fee, which is that one-time fee up front. For Pinch a Penny, it is $35,000, and it is renewable every 10 years. So you have that franchise for 10 years, and then you sign a new franchise agreement for another 10-year increment, and that, I think it's about $9,000 for the second.
So they do charge you a fee to renew.
They do charge you a fee to renew after 10 years.
But not the full fee.
No, I think it's between $9,000 and $10,000 right now. And then you pay the royalty, and the royalty.
If you don't renew, do they buy it back from you? What do they do?
No, if you decide it's something you don't want, then you're responsible for selling it. Now there have been 2 or 3 stores where people just walk away, but if you've got that much invested in it, you certainly would rather sell it and get some money out of it. But yeah, you're responsible. And if you say, gentleman on the North Monroe store, his 10 years were up, but they were trying to sell it and hadn't sold it yet. So, I think he paid $1,000 for a 1-year renewal until he could sell the house or the store. So they're pretty flexible with it because they want to make sure you do find the right owner because they have to approve the owner as well.
Couldn't they help you with that, though? If you contacted them and said, hey, I want to sell this store? Or
They could, but there's one realtor, I guess, business broker, and all his business is with Pinch Pennies, and he's fairly successful in selling the stores. And he worked closely with Pinch Penny. We get the initial fee, then the next one is the royalties. Most franchises are anywhere from 4 to 6%. Pinch Penny is 6%, and you pay that royalty fee on your sales. So if you don't make a profit, you're still paying that royalty fee. It's not any on your profit. And then they also have a 4% advertising fee, which is slightly higher than most of them out there. A lot of them are just 1 or 2%. But I think any good business, you want to at least spend 4 to 5% on advertising if you want to grow your business. And you do get quite a bit for that 4%. They do run the television commercials for you, all the ads. And then if we run an ad and say we give 10% off on products, they reimburse you out of that ad fund 5% of that. So it's also helping to offset the cost that you're sustaining by running those at lower prices. They also do all the internet advertising. So for me, it's certainly well worth it. And their advertising is targeted. Again, they all know the pool owners, and each store keeps track of their customer base by phone number and addresses. So they're pinpointing and sending those advertising flyers to the customers that shop in the stores only. So you're not wasting a lot of that ad money by sending to customers. It just throw in the trash as soon as they get it.
Is that like a 50% reimbursement, or is it just a 5%?
It's 50%. So if it's 10% off, they give you 5% of it, 5% back. So it's 50% of whatever the discount was.
how often do you pay royalties?
Weekly.
Weekly.
Yeah.
Okay, that's kind of a change, a trend that's going. It used to be very heavy monthly. Now it's going to weekly.
Yeah. And the way they do it is just set up a direct pull from my account. So
And that's not optional, I'm assuming.
it's not. They'll give you a bank account and they'll pull it out on every Wednesday. You can plan on it. So I get, as you pay those royalties, and talk a little bit about advertising, but also as I look at franchise, what am I getting for that 6%? So for every dollar I sell, 6 cents is going to them. The biggest thing I saw with Pinch Penny is they have a good support group as far as IT, which I think was real important. Also, the buying power. Probably 90% of the merchandise that we stock comes through Pinch Penny, so they almost act as they're a warehouse. And the chemicals, the supplies, the pool industry is kind of like the boat industry, whereas most of the vendors will not sell directly to the stores. You have to go through a wholesaler. So Pinch Penny acts as that wholesaler, and when I compare prices with Pinch Penny, what I get things from them versus some of the other local wholesalers that are around, it's usually 15 to 20% less through Pinch Penny than it would if I was paying to the regular wholesaler. So that certainly saves you money. Plus, you have a lot of different parts, and you hate to carry all those parts because that's inventory dollars instead of, that's just tied up. So it's easy to get. They deliver twice a week. And then also they take things back, if anything's defective, all we do is write it up on a credit form, send it back on the truck, and they issue credit. Or if product is just not moving, you can send it back as a credit and they'll give you credit, which is really helpful during the springtime when you're not sure, will I sell 5 cleaners or am I going to sell 25 cleaners? So you can buy the 25 cleaners knowing that, if I only sell 5, I can send 20 of those back. Whereas if I bought it from a wholesaler, if I bought 25 cleaners, I have to figure out a way to sell it. And the other thing was just brand recognition with Pinch Penny, especially throughout Florida. I thought certainly in pool business and with Pinch Penny, it's, we still compete a lot with the internet, but you do have that niche where customers are coming in, they get their water tested, and they're looking for a lot of advice and certainly knowledge, and that's certainly the thing that we try to offer, and it kind of sets us apart from the internet. You still have customers who come in and spend 35 minutes of your time, and you'll explain everything to them, and they'll go home and Google it and buy it on the internet, but that's part of every business in this day and age. And Pinch Penny, right now, as I said, we're about 230 stores, primarily all in Florida. There's one in Alabama, one in Georgia. They just opened up 2 in Louisiana, and they're just starting to open up stores in Houston and the San Antonio area. So the market in Florida is pretty well saturated, and there's a few locations left, but they don't want to put stores up just to put stores up, which a lot of franchisers just do that just to collect that franchise fee, but they don't want to, they want the stores to be successful, so therefore they've limited the growth now in Florida and looking at primarily Texas to expand out to. A couple other things that I felt they offered good was they also have a franchise advisory council, which consists of, there were 10 of us, 10 owners, and you would meet down in Clearwater 3 times a year, and they would cover all of the advertising that was coming up, different procedures, policies, and you actually had a voice and an open discussion on what things would, did people agree with, what would they like to see be done different. And I was president of that for 2 years, and it was an interesting back and forth. Bottom line is, they're going to do what they're going to do anyway, but they do still listen, and we tweaked some things that certainly helped and made a difference. I guess the biggest thing is they wanted to, at one point, cut a lot of the prices to match what was on the internet, which would have really, we still have to pay for rent, whereas the internet, they don't pay much for rent. And we probably went back and forth with that for a full year. And finally, through the discussions, we changed it to, instead of doing the prices, we would keep our regular prices and try to be competitive locally, but we would also offer an extended 3-year warranty, whereas on the internet you get the standard 1-year warranty. So we felt that, and that has been an excellent competitive advantage because, first of all, they know if they buy it from us, they get a 3-year warranty, plus if something's wrong, they just call us, and we'll go swap it out, and we take care of sending it back. Yes, sir.
Say you decide that the supply that you do have in the store, you decide to sell them online, you have to run that through Pinch.
I'm sorry.
The supplies that you do sell, so like food supplies, you decide to sell that on the internet, you have to run that through Pinch.
We're not allowed to sell anything on the internet. Yeah. And actually, we're not even allowed to have a web page per individual store. Pinch Penny has their central web page, and that's the only one that they do allow. Yeah, if they catch you selling stuff on the internet, they'll take away your store. And that's, as we get into, I guess, compliance, and that's, certainly you're with a franchise, there are rules and regulations. It's a lot different than a startup, and that's where when I talk to owners, the ones that had run businesses on their own were the ones that struggled the most with following the rules. They wanted to, one thing is you can only sell Pinch Penny chemicals, which are Suncoast chemicals. And the reason they want that is because, A, consistency, not only with what the customers see when they come into stores, but also they have better quality control over those products by doing that.
Don't they own Sun Chemical?
It is a
subsidiary?
Yes. So they pack it and they do the quality control. So the rules, I came from corporate world with Walmart. I was used to rules, and it was pretty well. Especially as the company grew, you followed. They told you what to put on a feature, and you put it there, and didn't ask questions, and moved on. So this is actually this is easy. It's like not having any rules. The big thing I like about the franchise and having those rules is, when you think of, McDonald's or any other franchise, if you go into a bad McDonald's, you go into a couple of those, your impression of McDonald's as a whole is, I don't want to go there, it's dirty, or I didn't like it. Same thing with Pinch Penny, is if you go into 1 or 2 stores, you get poor customer service, disorganized, that's your impression of Pinch Penny. By them enforcing the rules and regulations, that helps, I think, the value of my business, because the value of the whole Pinch Penny brand is going to increase. They do 3, probably 4 audits a year. 2 of the audits are where they just come in, they'll check dress code and make sure you have all the signing properly up, and you're doing all the basic things that are listed. And then once a year they do a financial audit. They're a corporation as well. They want to make sure they're getting all their royalties and their fees. So they will audit your books, audit your bank account, checking accounts, credit cards, all those type of items. They are flexible with merchandise you can carry, except for certain categories, like the chemicals, the nets and brushes. And again, they're trying to stress quality control, and that's why they're pretty strict on it. They'll give you 2 or 3 notices before they actually tell you you've got 6 months to sell your store. And they have done that on some stores where they go in and be the same issue, and they write you a reprimand. And if it doesn't get corrected and they continue to find that, then obviously you're in violation of your franchise agreement. And they would ask you to, you got 6 months to sell your store, or we'll just take it away and we'll sell it for you.
Do they have a first right of refusal? Like when you were coming here, did they offer the other guys in town that store, or?
They did, and they have to. Anybody, whether it be a new store or you purchase a store, you have to go in for interviews and be approved. But they did give the owner of the other store opportunity to purchase this one, and he decided not to. But the basic is.
Does it make you like update your store? Like, is there like a rule for how often you have to update your store?
Good question. There is, when you sign that next 10-year agreement, before they'll sign it, they will come in and give you a list of updates and upgrades that you have to do to your store. A friend of mine just had his down in Orlando, and 10 years ago they didn't have to put in the automatic doors, which it makes sense to have them just to begin with, but he had just the regular swing open doors, and part of his upgrades was he had to have those automatic doors put in before they would allow him to, and they're not cheap, they're I think about $16,000. So, but I mean, it makes sense for the customer when they're trying to haul pallets or carts of salt out or chemicals with those automatic doors that open. But yeah, they do, and they make sure any upgrades. About 10 years ago, they changed all the tiles on the floor, and that was about $8,000 or $10,000. So the stores that didn't have that, the old stores 15 years ago just had concrete and they painted it blue. So they did make all of those stores, as they came up for renewal, have to adjust. So it can get expensive.
With the 3-year warranties, do the individual owners have to cover that, or does Pinch a Penny?
Pinch a Penny covers it. So we just fill out the paperwork, send the product back to them, and then they reimburse us for it, which is certainly a win for us.
How about on any parts you would repair something with? Would they pay for those? Well, would they pay for those? Say somebody brings their Polaris in and it's a bad bearing under the 3-year warranty.
No, the 3-year warranty is just equipment.
Equipment.
Like pumps, the whole pump. Replacement motors are 1 year, but the biggest thing that the internet hits us on is whether it be filters or pumps or salt systems. So those are the categories that the 3-year warranty is. The other ones are just usually the manufacturer's warranty, which is 30, 60 days on most of the products. They don't, even motors used to be 3 years from the manufacturer, but then they get tired of losing money because it's chlorine, water, out in the elements. Those things can go fairly quickly, so they reduce it to 1. But most of the products have usually a 30 or 60-day warranty on them.
You guys questions? What when you said, and one thing I like is Pinch a Penny. It said they're more interviewing you than you were them, and I think you had mentioned before Quiznos. What was your experience with them?
Quiznos, and I was still with Walmart at the time, so I was kind of just looking around trying to get a feel. But they had an event at a hotel, and you walked in there, and it was probably 3 times the amount of people in there as here. And they did a sales pitch for about an hour. And their whole thing was, sign up, give us a franchise fee, and then you're responsible for finding the location. They gave you no guidelines or anything. And what I found is the only way they were generating income was through their franchise fees. And one of the gentlemen that owns the other Pinch a Penny, he had about 4 or 5 Quiznos down in Central Florida, and he sold them within a few years of purchasing them because he found the same thing. You couldn't generate enough revenue from the stores, and they just weren't as successful. And then they kept cutting the prices through their advertising, so your margin continually dropped.
Go up.
Yeah, sales went up, so you're paying more royalty, but your profit's going down because instead of making 50%, now you're making 30%. And a lot of them are, you got to watch out with that from the franchises because again, they get it top line as opposed to bottom line. So if they can drive more sales and aren't concerned with you being successful, then they can really erode your market, your price and your profitability. Subway's kind of in that kind of mode right now where you run those February or March specials, and the margins on those are fairly dismal. It does drive traffic into the stores, and you hope you can upsell them with some other things. But if you don't, your costs are going higher, and your profit is certainly shrinking.
So your winter months are very slow.
Winter months are extremely slow. We We sell Big Green Egg, which are grills and smokers, and we do fairly well with that during November, usually from Thanksgiving to Christmas. But during January, it's pretty slow. But the repairs and the service kind of help on that to get that, just generate that cash flow. Typically, we run usually four people, besides my wife and myself, 4 to 5 part-time associates during the spring and summer and early fall. And during the winter time, it's generally just myself, my wife, and my son will help out. He's in high school, so he's fairly flexible.
What is the worst pool you've seen and how much did it cost to fix it?
What's that?
What is the worst pool you've ever seen? How much did it cost them to fix it? As far as maintenance-wise, I mean, chlorine did something.
Typically, if it's a swamp, we'll tell them $600 to $800 to fix it, and that's not only the cost of the chlorine and the chemicals, but just you end up having to take 6 or 7 different trips out there because you have to continually just shock it and go back but yeah, usually a good $600 to $800. But those are swamps that have been left up. We've had some where they'll leave it. It's been an abandoned house, and somebody's buying it on a short sale, and that pool sat there for 1 to 2 years, and just it's a pond.
Wouldn't you just drain that, fill it back up, clean water?
If it's concrete, you can. If it's vinyl, it's difficult to do because that vinyl will shrink, and it'll usually will never go form back in, especially if it's an older liner. And the liner is about $5,000 to $6,000. So usually it's a better, unless they're going to buy a new liner to begin with, but otherwise, in some of the pools you don't even know what the liner looks like because it's so nasty.
It's green. It gets a green algae, and it's a mess. It's the whole key of having a pool staying on top of it. If you see it start to turn in, you need to shock it and get it.
We had one, and we didn't do it because I didn't have the time, but I gave it to somebody else to do, and we fixed the equipment, but you could take a scoop and just scoop out clumps of algae before you could even turn the equipment on. And the screen it had a screen enclosure. It was all caved in and everything was in. But yeah, it'll take a while.
And those liners usually last 8 years, 8 to 10 maybe,
Yeah.
depending on how much activity you have. But if I had one of those pools that were abandoned like that, you'd almost need to put in a new liner. It's because you had all that algae on there, and that chlorine it'll kill it, but it's not going to be.
It'll still be stained. It'll see a green stain.
Yeah. You got to stay on top of it.
Any other questions or questions?
I guess, given your experience with Pinch a Penny, going back, would you still choose Pinch a Penny? And right now, would you still consider opening up another one now or down the road?
I would still choose Pinch a Penny. I mean, it's certainly the business model works. It's something that I enjoy. I don't have any desire to open a second store. One is really more than enough. Especially if you look at to open another store, you're looking at another probably $300,000. Whereas I can buy another truck for $25,000 and continue to grow that service and pool cleaning business. To me, that makes more sense financially, expanding it that way. But down in Orlando, I mean, there's quite a few that have the 2 stores. But it does, the biggest thing with Pinch Penny is it does take, being there personally involved in it. Because
You'd have to hire a manager.
You have to hire a manager and hope that they would, a lot of people come to us because we've been there 8 years. They know when they come in there, they're going to see either myself or my wife. So you build that trust with people. When you're just flipping burgers or sandwiches, you don't have that one-on-one interaction. So it's important to be in the store, and I think that helps to drive the business. And we've got competition. Leslie's is one, and they're a corporate structure, so they hire managers, and I think they have 700 or 800 stores. But one opened across the street from us last year. They've already been through 3 different managers in just that course of that 1 year. So people really don't know them, don't have that trust. And when you talk about your pool, which is, for a lot of people, $40,000-$50,000 investment, it helps to build that relationship.
That radius that we have out there for the stores have to be, is that how you decide like the servicing and cleaning, like who gets what?
Yeah, that's how they do that part as well.
If one of the, say the Capital Circle store didn't offer cleaning though, could you then go out into that market?
Yeah. Or if it's the cleaning, you can't. Yeah, you can do the cleaning. The service. Let me correct myself. With the service, if it's one of your customers, you can go out of that area. So if I've got customers that are closer to his store, but they prefer to shop with me as opposed to there, then I can still go and service those stores.
But you said now corporate's going to start selling the service, the cleaning part out also.
So if he doesn't do this cleaning, then, but he does a small amount of service, so enough so that they can't open something up on him, which is why we do a small amount of cleaning, just enough to say we're doing it. But the biggest thing is doing the repairs, because when if you sell the equipment plus a service call, which is typically anywhere from $75 to $90, so in an hour and a half worth of work, you can get not only that $75 or $90, plus you can get the cost of the equipment. It makes more sense to do repairs than it does service, where an hour's worth of work you make maybe $20. So that's why we focus primarily on the repairs.
Unless you could hire somebody and have them outsource like have one person doing nothing but cleanings, I guess.
Yeah. As long as you find the right person.
Well, that's a challenge.
That is a challenge, because otherwise you get calls on Friday saying, "I have a party tomorrow, my pool's green." And that's the biggest opportunity, that the ones that have all the cleaning services, or somebody quits, and then who's going to do their 40 pools for that week? So it's a lot of stores do it. They like it. They're successful. For me personally, it's not worth the small amount of revenue I would get from those headaches. I had 20 years of those headaches, so I'm trying to keep my little world small.
Walmart headaches?
It's a whole different world in itself.
Would you, talking about Walmart though, they catch a lot of bad press, but what's a good thing about Walmart?
For a customer or
No,
working
a customer
there?
is cheap for working there.
When I first started, the stores were mostly the smaller stores. I think the largest one we have was 81,000 square feet. And the hours were 9 to 9, so that was kind of nice. Monday through 7 days a week, I think. But if you want to grow with the company, the opportunity for advancement starting out as an hourly associate, you have a great potential to grow and to get into management and even move further. Before I was with Walmart recruited me. I'd worked for Kmart before that, and I went to Walmart because of the growth opportunities. And I opened, I guess it was 30 to 35 stores up in the Northeast when I first went there, because there were only 2 or 3 stores in that Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, southern New Jersey area. And I would say probably 80% of my assistant managers and managers were people that I promoted from hourly associates that were eager, wanted to move forward, demonstrated a great work ethic, and they moved up, and even some now that are district managers.
They pay their managers well?
They pay, yeah. They've adjusted it now. They used to pay real well. Now they've kind of lowered it. Before, you used to get paid strictly on the profit of your store, which was great if you had a good store, but it was hard to get good managers to go to bad performing stores and turn them around because you didn't pay them. But you got a certain percentage of whatever the profit was of that store from the first dollar, which is a lot different than most companies. Most companies, they'll give you a target, and if you achieve that target, then you get a certain percentage as a bonus. If you go even higher, you get a higher percentage. With Walmart, it was your salary as a store manager was $20,000, but then the bonus started from the first dollar you made. So you get in, and that was, you were well paid when you had those smaller stores, and until just before I left, they hadn't changed that structure. So now You have stores that are super centers that are doing 150 million, 140 million in sales. As a manager, you're still making from that zero amount profit from all those sales and that profit from 150 million in sales. So they were
Not equitable.
yeah, for them, the company wasn't, but for managers, I mean, I had a couple managers that were making 200, 250,000. So they were, and now they've cut it to most of what the other companies are doing. But even for assistants to move up, I mean, that would, to me, that was probably the biggest, and still is a great opportunity. If somebody, you know, especially for people that didn't have college, I mean, we took people without college. You kind of limited them as far as how high they could go, but they could still be assistants, store managers, and even district managers. So that certainly, I think, was one of the good things that they had offered. And, you know, obviously great prices. And that makes
I would
a
think
difference.
good training also, though. You say
Well,
your time with Walmart prepared you to go out and you.
It was good training. I mean, everything you learned was on a computer-based learning as well for associates, which is what a lot of companies are now. But certainly, they spent a lot of time investing to make sure that you were successful. So it was certainly a good company to work for. But like every other company, it's changed. And now it's more, when I first started with them, it was more stores you were autonomous. And as the company grew and expanded, it became more controlled through the home office, just like most companies are. And some of that, they had no choice because every time you turn around, you get a lawsuit for doing something or not doing something, so they had to have better controls over what was going on.
You been sued at Pinch a Penny yet?
I have not, thank goodness. Now, with Walmart, at least once a week. And you would go to hearings, at least, you know, court cases and hearings several times a year.
More customers or employees?
It was probably 50-50. And when you figure, you know, typically I'd supervise 10 to 12 super centers, 400 to 450 people per store. That's, you know, even 1% is 50, 60 people. So if you got 1% that are issues with, then you all know that's probably a small percentage because you get a lot more.
Anybody else have any other questions? All right.
Thanks for your time.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
I think I got everybody coming late. I got you.